Some thinkers, like Augustine, work with the idea of God knowing himself and loving himself. In Christian tradition, this is described as an infinite unity between Father, Son, and Spirit, love, consciousness, relationship. So there is movement within God, but not like the time we understand, a state of eternal now. There is continuity, but not a process that ticks forward like a clock. The second approach is this: God sees creation, all of history, the fall and redemption of humanity as a whole. In some mystical thoughts, everything is present at once in God's consciousness, as if the whole story exists in the writer's mind before the first line is written. An expression in the Psalms feeds this idea. The days ordained for me were written before one of them came to be. This means that even before the universe existed, your story was in God's knowledge. Even before stars were born, your existence was on God's horizon. And here the narrative takes a dark turn. Because we see that existence is not just about light, peace, and harmony. The sacred texts speak of an extremely bright and powerful being. This being, traditionally called Lucifer, is described with beauty and wisdom. In some interpretations, he appears as a guardian cherub, close to God, magnificent, impressive. But here is the breaking point of the story. A moment comes when this being looks at his own light, at his own magnificence, and a whisper rises from within. I deserve more. This is how pride begins. Evil often doesn't arise like a monster from outside, but like a thought growing inside. Why should I bow, it says. Why should I only serve? Why shouldn't I also be the Most High? Those bold statements in the texts are the expression of this inner dialogue. I will ascend. I will raise my throne. I will make myself like the Most High. This is like the first great declaration of I in existence, the first rebellion, the first break. At this point, the concept of free will emerges. Because true love is not by force. If beings have no power to choose, obedience and loyalty lose their meaning. Freedom of choice also carries the possibility of falling. And that's why shadow appears alongside light. Perhaps not in the universe itself, but a crack forms in the story. So why did God allow this? This question is as jarring as who created God? Because here the human heart comes into play. If God knows everything, he also knew about the fall. So why? Theology doesn't give a precise mathematical answer to this question. But in a way it says this: if freedom is real, risk is also real. If love is real, the possibility of rejection is also real. And God's plan is not just to establish a perfect order, but to establish a real relationship with free beings. Then the stage moves to earth. Humanity is placed at the center of this great story. And here the unexpected happens. The eternal enters into time. Not like a distant power, like a being walking inside, into fragility, into pain, into death. The idea of God becoming human is jarring precisely because of this. Because this is not the narrative of God sitting up there watching. This is the narrative of God entering into the story. And if this is true, the question changes at the finale. Perhaps we were asking the wrong question from the very beginning. The question is not who created God. The real question is this: what kind of God enters his own created universe and faces pain and death to save it? What kind of love is this? A plan where love, not power, is at the center. A mystery even greater than the beginning. Now think, have you ever been afraid to ask this question? If the answer doesn't fit into logic, would you still want to know? Because perhaps the purpose of these questions is not to find an exact formula, to expand our minds, to awaken our hearts, and to enable us to look at existence with a deeper eye than before. One of humanity's most powerful questions is this: where did God come from? If everything has a beginning, who created God? Have you noticed that strange silence that fills you when you hear this question? As if the world stops for a moment, as if the universe holds its breath. Your mind searches for an answer, but words fall short. Because this question is not just a religious curiosity. It's like an arrow piercing the very center of what we call time, cause and effect, and existence itself. Today we will take a journey backwards, but this is not an ordinary return to the past. We will go to a threshold where time itself has not begun, to a boundary where atoms have not yet come together, stars have not yet shone, angels have not even entered the stage, even before the first B command. And there we will ask, if everything begins, how can God exist without beginning? Everything we know has a beginning. A day dawns, a day sets. A child is born into the world. An idea sparks in the mind. Trees grow, mountains erode, even stars are born and eventually fade. That's why our minds want to apply the same logic to God. If the universe has a beginning, who started the one who started everything? This question seems very logical at first glance. Because we live in a cause and effect order. If something exists, there must be a reason that made it exist. But here's where the paradox begins. What if God never began? What if God exists on a plane where the concept we call beginning doesn't apply to him? The strangeness of the question lies here. Because we, as beings living within time, are asking questions about a being outside of time using the rules of time. Asking, who created God, is like asking, what's north of the North Pole? The North Pole is already where the concept of north ends. There is nothing beyond it. That's why the question is a category error in itself. It appears to be a correct sentence, but in fact its meaning exceeds the boundaries of what it asks. Remember Moses' story. When Moses asked God for his name, God did not give him a title. He didn't say, I am king, I am Lord, I am ruler. He didn't offer a simple label for the mind to grasp. He only said this, I am who I am. That is, I exist. Not I became, not I will be. A declaration of existence that transcends the present moment. That doesn't fit into time. Pure and simple being. Think about this statement for a moment. We always define ourselves within time. I was this yesterday. I am this now. I will be that tomorrow. Even our identity is in a state of flux. But in the sentence, I am who I am, there is no flux. There is no change. There is no beginning. This is a declaration that God is outside our universe's ticking clock. While we move along the timeline, God is not within that line. He's like a writer holding the line in his hand. Sometimes it is said, God is not bound by time. Time is bound to God. We measure time by movement. The rising and setting of the sun, the beating of our hearts, the rotation of the earth. But before all these movements began, when the thing we call before had no meaning, God existed. That's why the question, what was there before God was created, becomes as strange as, who created him before God was created? Because the thing you call before is already a word within time. Now let's go even deeper. If God has always existed, what was there before creation? There were no stars, no galaxies, no light, no darkness, no matter, no energy, not even space, only God. This thought seems frightening to some. It looks like loneliness. But classical theology says this, God was not alone because God was not lacking. God's existence was complete in itself. He did not create to fill a void. He did not create out of need. Creation is described not as an obligation, but as a choice. Early thinkers gave interesting answers to the question, what was God doing before creation? One of them is this, God was living a perfect life within himself.